President Trump stood in the Oval Office, the weight of his decision pressing heavily on his shoulders as he prepared to test the limits of his emergency powers once again, a move that would send shockwaves through the nation and ignite a firestorm of debate across the political spectrum. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the occasional rustle of papers, as his advisors shuffled nervously, their faces a mix of apprehension and determination, each one acutely aware of the gravity of the moment. Outside, the world buzzed with speculation, the media already in a frenzy, dissecting every word, every gesture, every hint of what was to come, while protesters gathered outside the White House gates, their voices rising in a cacophony of anger and fear, their signs waving like flags in a battle for the soul of the nation. Inside, Trump leaned over the resolute desk, his pen poised above the executive order that would declare a national emergency, his mind racing with the implications of what he was about to do, the legal challenges that would surely follow, the political fallout that would reverberate through the halls of Congress and the courts, and the historical legacy that would be etched into the annals of American history. He had done this before, invoking emergency powers to bypass Congress and push through his agenda. But this time felt different, the stakes higher, the opposition more vocal, the lines between executive authority and overreach more blurred than ever. His advisors had warned him of the risks, of the potential for a constitutional crisis, of the damage it could do to the delicate balance of power that had held the nation together for centuries. But Trump was undeterred, his resolve steeled, by the belief that he was acting in the best interest of the country, that the ends justified the means, that sometimes a leader had to make the hard choices, no matter the cost. As he signed his name with a flourish, the ink drying quickly on the page, he felt a surge of adrenaline, a sense of purpose that drove him forward, even as the voices of dissent grew louder, even as the courts prepared to weigh in, even as the nation held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The order was clear, the emergency declared, the wheels of government set in motion. But the battle was far from over. The limits of presidential power once again pushed to the brink, the question of where those limits truly lay hanging in the balance, a question that would be answered not by Trump, but by the institutions of democracy themselves, as they struggled to uphold the principles upon which the nation was founded, in a time of unprecedented challenge and change. The declaration of the emergency was met with immediate backlash, as lawmakers on both sides of the aisle scrambled to respond, their reactions ranging from staunch support to outright condemnation, the halls of Congress echoing with heated debates and impassioned speeches. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, a longtime ally of the president, found himself walking a tightrope, torn between his loyalty to Trump and his commitment to the constitutional principles he had sworn to uphold, while House Speaker Nancy Pelosi wasted no time in condemning the move as an abuse of power, vowing to challenge it through every available legal and legislative means. The courts, too, were quickly drawn into the fray, as lawsuits were filed by advocacy groups, state attorneys general, and even private citizens, each one arguing that the president had overstepped his authority, that the emergency was a thinly veiled pretext for advancing a political agenda, and that the very foundation of democracy was at risk. The judicial system, already strained by the weight of previous challenges to Trump's actions, now faced its greatest test yet, as judges at every level were called upon to interpret the limits of executive power, to weigh the president's claims, of necessity against the constitutional safeguards designed to prevent tyranny. Meanwhile, the American public remained deeply divided, their opinions shaped by the media they consumed, the communities they lived in, and the values they held dear, as protests erupted in cities across the country, the streets filled with voices demanding accountability, transparency, and respect for the rule of law. Social media became a battleground, with hashtags like emergency power and constitutional crisis trending worldwide, as people from all walks of life weighed in on the debate, their posts reflecting the deep polarization that had come to define the era. Amidst the chaos, Trump remained defiant, his tweets a constant stream of justification and counterattack, as he sought to rally his base, to frame the emergency as a necessary response to a crisis that only he could solve, to paint his critics as enemies of progress and patriots as defenders of the nation. His supporters, ever loyal, echoed his rhetoric, their faith in his leadership unshaken, their belief in his vision unwavering, even as the legal challenges mounted and the political pressure intensified. Behind the scenes, White House aides worked tirelessly to manage the fallout, to craft a narrative that would withstand the scrutiny of the courts and the court of public opinion, to ensure that the president's actions were seen not as an overreach, but as a bold and necessary step in the face of unprecedented challenges. They knew that the stakes were high, that the outcome of this battle would shape the future of the presidency, the balance of power, and the very nature of American democracy. And they were determined to fight for their vision of the country, no matter the cost. As the days turned into weeks, the nation watched and waited, the tension palpable, the outcome uncertain, the question of where the limits of emergency powers truly lay still unanswered, as the institutions of democracy struggled to navigate the uncharted waters of a political landscape that had been forever changed by the actions of a president who was willing to test those limits, again and again, in pursuit of his vision for America. As the legal battles raged on, the Supreme Court found itself at the center of the storm, the 9 justices tasked with deciding a case that would define the boundaries of presidential authority for generations to come. The courtroom was packed on the day of oral arguments, the air thick with anticipation, as the lawyers for both sides presented their cases, their words carefully chosen, their arguments meticulously crafted, each one aware that the fate of the nation hung in the balance. The justices, their faces inscrutable, listened intently, their questions probing, their concerns evident, as they grappled with the complexities of the case, the weight of their responsibility heavy on their shoulders. Outside, the streets were filled with protesters, their voices rising in a chorus of dissent and support, their signs and banners a vivid reminder of the deep divisions that had come to define the era. The media, ever vigilant, covered every moment of the proceedings, their analysis and commentary shaping public opinion, their headlines a reflection of the high stakes and the intense emotions that surrounded the case. As the days turned into weeks, the nation waited with bated breath, the tension mounting, the uncertainty growing, as the justices deliberated behind closed doors, their discussions shrouded in secrecy, their decision the subject of endless speculation. Finally, the day of the ruling arrived, the courtroom once again filled to capacity, the atmosphere electric with anticipation as the Chief Justice began to read the majority opinion, his voice steady, his words measured, as he outlined the court's decision, a ruling that would either uphold the president's actions or strike them down as an unconstitutional overreach. The room held its breath as he spoke, the weight of the moment palpable, the implications of the decision clear, as the justices affirmed the limits of executive power, their ruling a rebuke to the president, a reaffirmation of the principles of checks and balances, and a reminder that no one, not even the president, is above the law. The reaction was immediate and intense, the ruling celebrated by some as a victory for democracy, condemned by others as a betrayal of the nation's interests. As the president took to Twitter to express his outrage, his tweets a mix of defiance and frustration as he vowed to fight on, to continue to push the boundaries of his authority, to challenge the institutions that sought to constrain him. His supporters rallied behind him, their faith in his leadership unshaken, their belief in his vision unwavering, as they prepared for the next battle in what had become a never-ending war for the soul of the nation. Meanwhile, his critics breathed a sigh of relief, their fears of unchecked executive power momentarily assuaged, their commitment to the rule of law reaffirmed, as they turned their attention to the next election, to the task of holding the president accountable at the ballot box, to the work of rebuilding the institutions that had been tested and strained by the events of the past few years. And so, the nation moved forward, the question of where the limits of emergency powers truly lay still unresolved, the battle for the future of American democracy far from over, as the president continued to test those limits again and again, in pursuit of his vision for America, a vision that would shape the nation for years to come, for better or for worse. As the dust settled from the Supreme Court's landmark decision, the nation found itself at a crossroads, the ruling serving as both a moment of reckoning and a call to action for citizens across the country. The president, undeterred by the judicial rebuke, doubled down on his rhetoric, using his platform to galvanize his base, to paint the courts and his political opponents as obstacles to progress, and to frame the ongoing struggle as a battle between the will of the people and the entrenched powers of the establishment. His rallies grew larger, his speeches more fiery, his promises more grandiose as he sought to cement his legacy and secure his place in history, even as the legal and political challenges to his authority continued to mount. Meanwhile, his critics, emboldened by the court's ruling, redoubled their efforts to hold him accountable, to push back against what they saw as an assault on the foundations of democracy, and to mobilize voters ahead of the next election. Grassroots organizations sprang up across the country, their mission to educate, to advocate, and to empower citizens to take a stand, to make their voices heard, and to demand transparency, accountability, and respect for the rule of law. The media, too, played a crucial role. Their coverage of the ongoing crisis shaping public opinion, their investigative reporting uncovering new details about the president's actions, their op-eds and analysis providing a platform for debate and discussion as the nation grappled with the implications of the events unfolding before them. Social media remained a battleground, its algorithms amplifying the voices of both supporters and critics, its platform serving as a space for organizing, for mobilizing, and for spreading information, both true and false, as the battle for the narrative continued to rage. Amidst the chaos, ordinary citizens found themselves thrust into the spotlight, their stories, their struggles, and their voices becoming a powerful reminder of the human cost of the political battles being waged. In their name, they marched in the streets, they packed town halls, they flooded the airwaves with calls to action, their determination and resilience a testament to the enduring strength of the American spirit. And as the next election loomed on the horizon, the stakes could not have been higher, the choice before the nation clear, as voters prepared to decide not just the future of the presidency, but the future of democracy itself. The question of where the limits of emergency powers truly lay remained unresolved. The battle for the soul of the nation far from over, as the president continued to test those limits again and again in pursuit of his vision for America, a vision that would shape the nation for years to come, for better or for worse. And so, as we reflect on these events, as we consider the lessons learned and the challenges that lie ahead, let us remember the power of our voices, the importance of our participation, and the responsibility we all share to protect and preserve the principles upon which this nation was founded. If you found this story compelling, if you believe in the importance of staying informed and engaged, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Together, we can ensure that the story of our democracy continues to be written by the people, for the people, and that the limits of power are always held in check by the will of the people. Thank you for watching, and remember, your voice matters.